right. For those who have been waiting and for those who are arriving, welcome to the Climate Tech Talks. I'm your host, Daniel. With me today, we have our co-host also, David, and we are very excited to have Robert Gardner with us. He's the founder of Rebalance Air, and he happens to be right now at COP28 in Dubai. So, yeah, over this conversation, we'll delve into Robert's journey as a founder, but also we're very interested to dig a bit deeper on what's going on COP28 and Robert's view. Welcome, Robert. Welcome, David. How are you guys?
Very well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, likewise. Super excited to have Robert today. So, shall we start from the top, Daniel? Like, let's just ask Robert for the benefit of everyone just joining online. If you were a bit curious on Robert's journey, Robert has, launched and created, still managing a lot of different companies. So I don't know if you want to briefly introduce Robert yourself and your journey, and how little by little you have come up to really put nature at the center of what you do, how each role kind of led you to where you are right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Well, look, good morning, good afternoon. It's afternoon here. I know, Daniel, you're in South America, so we've
Yeah.
got a number of time zones. But yeah, so I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Rebalance Earth, and we're launching a fund in the UK called the Rebalance Earth UK Nature Recovery Fund. And the goal is to protect and restore nature at scale. Now, why would we do that? I'm here at COP, which is really about climate change, and so we'll talk about that more. But we face twin challenges right now: climate change and the loss of nature and biodiversity. And so when we think of flooding, that is a combination of climate change, but also the way we have changed our land. And the shocking statistic is that we have lost 70% of our wildlife on our planet since 1970. So if any of you are part of a team at work, or a team that plays sport, or part of an orchestra, or into theatre, imagine if you lost 70% of your band, your choir, your team. You wouldn't be able to function. And that is where we are today. Now, the cool thing about nature is it recovers, it replicates if we allow nature to recover. So it's a naturally compounding asset, which, if you come from the world of finance, which I do, is a great thing. And so a major component of the way that we're going to solve the climate change issue is through nature. Arguably 35-40% of our carbon sequestration, i.e. the sucking of carbon out the air, can come from nature, as well as all of the wonderful benefits that nature provides us, from pollinating our food, to helping mitigate climate change, to helping mitigate floods and drought. So that is the goal of Rebalance Earth. But how did I get here? I suppose it's taken me 25 years. I started by studying geography. I've had a passion for geography, and specifically glaciology and hydrology. We were talking earlier with Daniel. He's in Chile. I remember when I was 7 years old taking a photo of a glacier called Perito Moreno. Google Perito Moreno. It's one of the few glaciers in the world that is still advancing. But sadly, glaciers are the canary in the coal mine when it comes to climate change. They are retreating at a phenomenal rate. Every second, our Greenland ice sheets are melting 17 million liters of water a second. 17 million of these is melting of the Greenland ice sheet and going into the sea, and rising sea level, which will cause places like Venice and Miami to flood. So I studied geography, and then I went right, and I went into finance. I worked at Deutsche Bank, I worked at Merrill Lynch. And then I started thinking about pension funds, the problem of how do we make sure that people have enough money for when they retire. And so I founded a company called Reddington that advises some of the largest pension funds in the UK, with the goal of how do we make 100 million people financially secure, whilst at the same time protecting people and planet. And so that has been the goal of Reddington. I'm still a shareholder in Reddington. I founded another business called Mallow Street that also operates in that space, with the goal of making a better retirement for everyone. And both those companies are a B Corp. And a key belief that I have is that business should be a force for good. And then for the last 4 years, I was the director of investments for one of the largest wealth managers in the UK, responsible for running 150 billion pounds worth of money for over 1 million people, from babies right the way through to centenarians.
Mm.
And my goal was simple: financial well-being in a world worth living. And it was 2 years ago at COP26 in Glasgow, where I was doing some of the work that we'd done around aligning our portfolios with the net zero world, that I really started to understand the impact of nature loss and this twin crisis that we face. So that's what's brought me here. I quit my job a year ago and I've gone all in on Rebalance Earth, and I want to play our part in helping to protect and restore 30% of nature, on life on land and life underwater, starting in the UK.
Mm. That's amazing. And it's quite interesting that the three of us, share the geoscience background because David and I are geophysicists by training. And maybe perhaps that's what sparked what light the spark at the very first beginning, because we got in touch closer to climate science and earth sciences in general. I personally studied marine geosciences in Germany, and that's where I really got to understand the way the past climate changes. And that really got me, like, hit me, because that's when I realized that this is real and that we have the power to understand it and also to solve it in a way. And that's why we also join forces to try to do something to make amends with the planet, right?
I kind of want to. I have a follow-up question. I mean, it's
Hmm.
super interesting, Robert, on yeah, as you mentioned, interested in nature, natural sciences, all the way to how you saw business as a force for good to
Hmm.
build and really give back, right? And build all these different regenerative business models that give back instead of just take, take, take. And one of the key questions, and I think a lot of people that are just watching COP from, from the sidelines, and I'm sure that you've seen the critics all over the place, um, have criticized. I'm just gonna go right to the
Yeah,
crux of the
no. I think
matter,
it's
right?
important.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned and the other day also in your feed, like a lot of people criticize Al Jaber. He's the CEO of ADNOC, and one of the biggest, most influential oil companies in the world. Not only because yeah they produce quite a lot, but because of this geopolitical situation, right? And not surprisingly, a lot of people criticize, well, what is this oil guy kind of overseeing what a climate conference should be, right?
Yeah.
When obviously, probably reality is kind of a bit more nuanced. So I would love if you can share your view now that you're kind of there seeing, yeah, perhaps that side of things, but all the other kind of climate commitments that are happening, and what would be like the lowlights and highlights that you've seen so far, despite kind of that contextual of who's organizing it.
Yeah, no, great question. I think it's really important we go right into that. What I want to do is just maybe set the scene for everyone, so everyone
Yes.
understands
Yeah.
what is a COP, how does it work, what is his role,
Hmm.
where are we, where do we need to get to. So COP stands for the Conference of the Parties. There's 198 parties, which is 197 countries around the world, plus the European Union. Uh, Actually, they're meeting all year round, but this is like the big global conference where they all come together
Hmm.
to kind of discuss where we are and where we're going. And I suppose, why are we even having this conversation? Climate change is real. 2023 was the hottest year in 3 million years. The hottest year in 3 million years. And as temperatures rise, what happens is it changes our weather patterns. So it means we get more droughts.
Hmm.
We're having a drought right now in Panama, which means not as many ships can go through, which is impacting trade. We get
Yeah.
more drought and more flood, which means that in 2023, the wine industry lost $35 billion worth of revenues because it wasn't able to produce as much wine. So global wine production was down 7%. We're getting heat waves, we're getting droughts, we're getting fires like the fires we had in Canada, destroying our forest. These impacts impact people's lives. Diseases are increasing. More people are dying from heat wave. More people are dying from malaria and dengue fever as a result of climate change. So climate change, I suppose it's really important to connect it to citizens all around the world. What does this mean for me? Because it can feel like this weird thing that happens in Dubai, happens in Sharm el Sheikh, happens in Glasgow or Paris. But what does it mean for me as a citizen? So climate change will impact each and every one of us over our lifetime. Unfortunately, it's impacting some of the poorest people around the world right
Mm-hmm.
now. Whereas many people living in the UK, it doesn't really impact our lives. Yeah, except if you do live in the UK, the floods that we've been having in the UK disrupting
Yeah.
our trains and damaging people's homes, that is a direct impact of climate change and land use change. The way we use our land exacerbates that
Mm-hmm.
problem, and we can do something about it. Now, the second question is, how has it taken 28 COPs to get here? I mean, on this call, we probably remember the Rio Earth Summit that kicked off all of this. So how is it that we've got 28 COPs and we've still not figured out this problem? It's because we can't agree on the destination. And there's a discourse around, is climate change real? I think that's now gone away now. That was probably the discourse 2 years ago. But now it's about, but if we transition to a net zero world, is it going to cost more? This is bad for the economy. This will mean that people lose their jobs. Whereas actually that's not true. Renewable energy is free energy from the sun, from the wind, from our waves, from our water. I just came from the Saudi pavilion, which is behind me, and they can now desalinate water using a combination of solar in the day, wind at night, and green hydrogen from the excess energy they produce to act as a battery. And they're now desalinating water at cost parity with oil. And in fact, it is 2.5 times cheaper than if they were using the same input costs that the rest of the world has to pay for oil. It's just that oil in Saudi Arabia is subsidized. So, renewable energy has now reached a scale, what's called the S curve on the law of distribution and innovation, where
Yeah.
even without policy change, energy is basically free. Marginal energy is free. We just need to build the infrastructure to be able to harness that and make that happen.
Exactly.
And that is going to be game changing. The issue is that in that transition, there are winners and there are losers.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably, the losers will be the oil and gas companies. Now, what's interesting about Saudi is it's playing both sides. It's obviously got Saudi Aramco, the largest, most valuable company by revenues on the planet, but it is doing some incredible stuff in renewables, in nature restoration. Some of the
Yeah.
stuff that they're doing to recover their nature is huge. And I suppose that comes to the discourse and criticism of this COP, because you say, how is it that the CEO of one of the largest oil companies in the world is chairing this? Think of him as the conductor of the orchestra. He has to
Yeah.
coordinate all of these 198 parties to agree on stuff. Now, UAE, who are hosting this, they have the ambition for this to be the biggest and best COP since 2015, when Paris, we all collectively agreed to hit net zero. Now, between then, emissions have continued to go up. But here's the good news. People are talking about the fact that peak emissions will probably be reached in 2025. And once we break that, then we can start to go down because the technology is here. And the big pledge that people are hoping that come out of this is that we triple our renewable energy capacity
All right.
and we double our energy efficiency. So energy efficiency is how much energy does it take to heat our homes or to
Mm-hmm.
power our vehicles. So if you think about that, that is a 6x increase in energy abundance. And as I say, the marginal cost of that energy is free. Now that is incredibly disruptive because we have an economic system that has been built around energy coming from fossil fuels. And I suppose that's the contrast. But my understanding from here on the ground is UAE want to make this the best COP. They started with a strong footing because at COP27 in Sharm el Sheikh, they couldn't agree the loss and damages fund, which was to pay for some of the poorest countries in the world to adapt to climate change. Now, it started with a $400 million fund, which is tiny in the grand scheme of things. They need billions of dollars, but at least they got the money, and they did that on day one. The second thing they did is on Sunday, they put health as an agenda item. Health has never been an agenda item at a COP of all the COPs. So understanding the implications to health and therefore people's lives, and how addressing climate change will save millions of people's lives, having that on the agenda is huge. The big decision, though, and we'll know this a week on Monday, Tuesday, so on the 11th and 12th of December, when they wrap up this whole conference, is, are we going to basically say no more fossil fuels and transition down?
Exactly.
That's the big one. The second thing which came out over the weekend, which didn't get much coverage, was actually UAE have committed $30 billion of their own money, which is proper money, to help catalyze that kind of renewable transition. And that will be catalyzing finance, because then the banks of this world can come in and put additional equity and put in additional debt on top and create a lot. So I think it's complicated. And why is it complicated? Because the technology exists. 80% of the technology exists to transition the way we produce energy, to transition the way we store and use energy. The journey on agriculture and regenerative agriculture is beginning, but we need to accelerate that. But again, we know what to do. There's a little bit on the edge of technologies we need to still figure out, in terms of how do we get to sustainable aviation beyond sustainable aviation fuel. But basically, we know what we need to do. We can basically get 70 to 80% of it done with technology. So what's in the way is policy. Is vested interest, and what this means, who's going to be the winners and losers in this environment. And so I think we need a number of things. We need vision. We have that vision from Paris to keep a 1.5 degree C alive. Now that goal is very, very challenging. That would be like, us setting out on trying to, climb Everest or something extremely hard. So let's not underplay how hard 1.5 degrees is. But, success is maybe being between 1.5 and 2 degrees C. Because every 0.1 degree C really matters, really accentuates the risk of flooding, the risk of drought, the risk of malaria and dengue fever, and the impact on 8 billion people around the world. The second thing is buy-in. How do we get people to buy in? And I think the COP president's comments are unhelpful, because it shows that there's a lack of buy-in to that vision. How is it that the UAE as the host country can have this ambitious and bold vision, and then the COP president it feels like he's basically, undermining it. But success is finance, and I think we're mobilizing the finance. Mark Carney did a brilliant job 2 years ago at COP26 with GFANs, and how do we get all the big banks, the JP Morgans, the Cities, the Bank of America Merrill Lynch's, the Mizuhos from Japan, the banks here in the Middle East, to get behind it. And I think the banks are recognizing that they need to finance this new world rather than the old world. But the key thing is really the skills. People need to have the skills to transition, which is why I think Zero Earth is so important. Help people understand that there's such a great opportunity for new jobs. I mean, in the UK, green jobs around this renewable transition, this clean energy transition, are creating lots of new jobs. And so how can we get people excited about, and this isn't just about energy, this is about the circular economy in fashion, this is about the circular economy in the buildings that we design and build. It doesn't matter whether you're an architect or in the fashion industry, we need to rapidly transition to a circular economy where we significantly reduce the environmental footprint of everything that we do. That isn't just about carbon, it's about the way we use our water, it's about the waste that we produce, it's about stopping the plastic that goes into our oceans. But we can do it. That's the crazy thing. And I suppose for me, there's maybe 70, 100,000 people here at COP, and everyone here understands the problem. And how is it that we can get the bulk of citizens back at home, whether it's in the UK or Chile or anywhere else in the world, to understand that it's in all of our interest that we can transition to this new world, that this actually reduces the cost of living crisis. Who doesn't want to live in a better insulated home with lower energy bills, with free energy from the sun? Who doesn't want to have more our children? and show that actually over a 10-year period we can get there and it is better for all of us. And actually, this helps some of the poorest and the people with the least opportunity the
Yeah,
most. That has to be a good thing. Once we can get citizens to understand this and understand that the narrative that's been sold to them about we're coming for your cars and your burgers and this we're going to crash the economy, and that the net zero movement is some kind of woke movement driven by Davos. Once people flip on that, then the politicians will flip, and when the politicians flip, then the policies will flip. Because guess what? We won't subsidize sugar. We'll reduce the amount of sugar in our food. We'll make it
exactly.
unacceptable to put plastic bottles in our oceans. We'll drive policy to enable those companies to be a force for good, enable those banks to finance this new world, because the faster we get, the better benefits for everyone. So back to your question, David, this COP is a COP of contradictions, and I wouldn't want to call what happens, because as I say, on the one hand, I keep hearing just how ambitious UAE are to make this the best COP since Paris. And in
Mhm.
order to do that, they're going to have to deliver on some big ambitions. But it seems paradoxical that running into this, the BBC ran an article showing that they were having sidebar conversations about delivering the last barrel of oil to countries around the world. And you have a COP president who is questioning the science of transitioning
Yeah,
to this new world that I'm talking about.
yeah. Oh, that's very interesting, Dave, Robert, and you really touch on a lot of edges I would like to dig deeper. You briefly said some comments on how people like you and me, individuals all around the world, can do something. And one of the things you mentioned is no matter that your profession, your career, you can always, try to work or try to work towards a sustainable company or in a sustainable company. What and COP28 feels sometimes like very on the top of things, like decision making things, but how would you say that distill down to the individual level? And as a follow-up question, what would you say that we as individuals what else can we do to play a bigger role in this climate change game?
Great. Okay. I'll off the top of my head, I think there are about 6 or 7 points.
Mm,
But the first one is awareness and education. Being
hmm.
on calls like this, trying to understand, demystifying the myths around electric cars and renewables, really understanding, or the myths around China. And I mean, China are leading the renewable
Yeah,
revolution. They're producing more clean energy than anyone else on the planet.
exactly.
They're restoring their degraded landscapes. Likewise, Saudi Arabia. So I think let's understand the problem, and not just the science of climate change and
Hmm.
warming, but what this means for you wherever you live, whether you live in Chile or Australia or the UK or Kenya or UAE. What does this mean for me? So point one, understand that. I think once the second thing is vote. The US has got
Right.
a big election next year. You know, the issue is that most politicians know that young people, the people who care about this the most, don't vote, and so politicians are just a reflection of the people who will vote them into
Yeah.
power. So we're seeing this play out in the UK, where Rishi Sunak and the Conservative Party are playing to a very small minority of people of a certain demographic who buy into this sort of anti-net zero woke narrative. But that isn't the vast proportion of the population. So, you know, we need to get younger people voting, understand the policies. What policies will the Conservative Party have around net zero? What policies
Yeah.
will Labour, will the Liberal Democrats, and the
Hmm.
Green Party? But really, it's a two-party race in the UK. But vote for what you care about. The issue with politicians is their time horizon is so short term, whereas addressing this problem is a long term problem. So that's two things: learn
Yeah.
and then vote.
Hmm.
Then where you earn your money, where you choose to earn your money really matters. When I was younger, I really wanted to work for Shell and BP. Every company needs two things. It needs a compelling proposition to sell to their customers, so it needs customers, and it needs talent and employees to build that proposition. Every person on this call is a talented individual that can make transformational change to the companies that they work for. So who you
Exactly.
choose to work for really matters. And we're already
It's
seeing this in the
important.
UK
Hmm.
where universities are banning the oil and gas companies from coming to present at their graduate fairs. So ask yourself, understand your company. Has your company made net zero pledges? Has it signed up to SBTI? Have you read your company's sustainability report? Send an email to the chief sustainability officer at your company. And are they greenwashing? Are they just setting ambitions and
Hmm.
platitudes, or are they walking the walk? It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You could be in the oil and gas industry. You could be in the metals and mining industry, because we need all of these we certainly need metals and mining in the future. I want the oil and gas companies to transition to a renewable world. They're good companies with good people, but we need to transition off this idea of taking hydrocarbons out of the ground to produce for energy.
Yeah.
Understand that, and if your company isn't doing enough, go and work for a company that does. Then where do you save your money? Look at your bank where you have your
Hmm.
mortgage and you save your money with. Where are they on all of these commitments? And again, I know there are websites in the UK, but I'm sure there are websites around the world where you can understand where's your bank on all of this. Then think about your consumption. I think, the elephant in the room is we do need to consume less. Black Friday was a record year for people buying stuff, but
It's incredible. Yeah.
how much of the stuff we buy do we need versus do we want? So thinking about our consumption, and one of the UN SDGs is responsible consumption, is really important.
Mm.
But then if you buy stuff, buying stuff's okay. I need new clothes, but buy stuff from companies that reuse, recycle. In the UK, there's a company called Charles Tyrwhitt where you can take in any old shirt from any other company, and they give you £5 off the purchase of your next shirt, and then they're using that money
Mm.
to produce their future shirts for less money. So it's saving money, but crucially, it's having a lower impact on
Yeah,
the environment.
exactly.
Uh, Again, food. I mean, food waste in the UK is just criminal. Food is a major source. The food we produce is a major source of carbon emissions and land destruction. So the first thing we need to do is address food wastage. So again, mindful consumption of food, but it's not just good for the planet. It's good for our own health and well-being. People shouldn't be dying from diabetes as a result of their
Exactly.
diet. That's just a tragic result of
Of the
overconsumption if
industry.
it's driven by if it's driven by your food. So that's where you spend your money. Be more mindful about how much you not how much, but how much stuff you buy. I'm not saying don't enjoy life. I mean, everyone enjoy, but just be more mindful. And in fact, the things you enjoy, you'll enjoy even more. I'm a big believer you can have anything you want in life, but you can't have everything. And I think that's the great illusion that's being sold to us. So let's just be more mindful
Yeah.
in choosing what we want and really valuing and enjoying that. And then when we do buy stuff, let's buy from companies that are truly embracing the circular economy and really trying to think about how are they doing it in a responsible way in terms of
Hmm.
reducing their environmental footprint, ensuring that people who work in their supply chain are well paid, all of these things.
Yeah.
So that's where we spend our money. The biggie is where we invest our money. In the UK, there's been some great research that shows that how we invest our pension fund money over the next 40 years can be 27 times more impactful than flying less, eating less red meat,
Hmm.
cycling to work, and really engage with your pension. And this is my point about financial well-being in a world worth living in. We all
Yeah.
need, hopefully many of us will live into our 80s, 90s, or even the younger people on this call will live to 100. So we need to ensure that we have enough money for that future world. But really engage with your pension fund, understand how it's investing, how is it thinking about these risks, and how is it engaging with those companies to do something about it. And look, finally, if you want to do more, there are some amazing charities and philanthropies out there. Everyone from WWF, which is probably the largest environmental
Mm.
NGO around
Yeah.
the world, the World Wildlife Trust, National Trust, RSPB. Uh, give your money, or in fact, give your time. Become a citizen scientist, and you can give back. So I don't know how many that is. Is that 6 or 7? But learn, vote, where you earn your money, where you save your
Where you
money,
where you
how
spend
you
it.
spend your money, how you invest your money,
Yeah.
and then if you want to give back. So those would be 7 things that I think you can do as an employee to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty amazing
So
advice.
as an
And
individual,
yeah, as an individual, exactly. And I think one of the most important ones for me that you mentioned, I mean, it wasn't part of the list, but it's being mindful of what of your decisions. And I think that really have driven me, steer the wheel in my sustainability journey. Like, if I want to buy, I don't know, like a new bicycle, I think about it more than twice. I think, do I need it? How can we reduce the impact not only in my wallet, but also like how is it important to do it right now? And yeah, same thing with food, with every decision I'm making lately. Um, I'm having sustainability in my mind so I can be aware of what I'm doing and the way I am spending my money. By the way, in the UK we have My Mother Tree, if I recall it correctly. That's one of the companies that is also helping people understand the impact of their money, where they have their bank accounts, etc., and also the pension funds.
yeah,
And
make my money matters. Is make my money
exactly,
matters is
yeah,
the
exactly,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
Hmm.
they're running a big campaign. Richard Curtis is
Yeah,
around really understanding how your pension fund is invested and really understanding the impact that it can have.
yeah, and that's also very important. As an individual, sometimes we think that we are just tiny piece of the big scheme of things, but as a collective, we really have a lot of power. And as with education, the more people we we you know the more people jump in with working towards climate, the higher the impact is going to be. So again, we can all boycott at least banks that are, uh, supporting oil and gas if we have the information and if we've had the knowledge. So yeah, that's very, very important. And how about climate justice? Does the COP28 have something about it in the agenda? And how do you see climate justice real? I mean, in the real life, is it really happening? How can we help lower income countries to?
Yeah. So one of the ambitions from UAE is inclusion, and I think by inclusion
Yeah,
they mean climate justice.
yeah,
Just so everyone on the call knows what climate justice means, what's happening is some of the poorest countries and some of the poorest people in the world are the ones that are feeling the brute force and impact
exactly.
of climate change right now. It's farmers in Kenya where climate change is changing the rainfall and impacting their ability to farm. I mean, closer to home in Spain, droughts have meant that olive farmers haven't been able to grow enough olives, and the price of olive oil
Hmm.
has gone through the roof. So we might feel the impacts of that because our olive oil is more expensive, but at the
Yeah,
end of that journey is families and people who have a job, who
exactly.
have an income. We also have some islands around the world which are at risk of going underwater. There's a nation state called Tuvalu, which is an island between literally in the middle of the Pacific. If you got a
Hmm.
globe and picked right in the middle of the Pacific, then that is where Tuvalu is. That is a nation that is about to flood. At
Hmm.
COP26 2 years ago, the president did a speech where he was stood in water up to his knees, and the
Oh,
people of
I
Tuvalu
remember
already
that one.
know.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Already know. It's sad. The people there
It is
are thinking
very
about
sad.
what they're going to do. So Australia just announced that they would give visas and passports to anyone from Tuvalu to come. So that is basically climate refugees. This is an
Hmm.
entire country. Okay, it's a small
Exactly.
country, but these are people who are born there, who have lived there, who want to live there. They don't want to
Yeah.
leave,
Yeah.
but are going to have to leave as a direct result of closer to where you are, Daniel. I'm sure you know the story of the farmer in Peru, in Juarez, who is
Hmm.
suing some of the big energy companies like RWE because
Yeah.
what's happening is climate change is changing the glaciers and is causing these sort of big surges in floods, which then obviously impacts his and other farmers' ability to farm the land and therefore have an impact. Now, the amazing thing is, if they can prove the linkage to those companies, that will change everything, because all of a sudden the people who cause the most damage to climate change will be on the hook for the
Exactly.
liabilities, be that the floods or the droughts. So climate justice is saying, we need to help the poorest countries with money, really, to mitigate, to adapt to climate change. Again, it's the poorest countries that can't afford stuff like the Met Office or NOAA, which is our meteorological systems that can predict weather patterns, and therefore you can evacuate quickly. Let's make sure that the Met Office or the NOAA, we give that know-how to. We need to make sure that the money enables them to buy into this new world, to benefit from the renewable transition, to get to electrification, but clean energy electrification, because we know that GDP and energy growth are correlated. And so it's within all of our interests to help people to do that. And then crucially, when it comes to deforestation and nature recovery, how do we engage with the indigenous people?
Oh, I think we might have lost.
Lost Robert.
Yeah, I think we lost Robert.
Just give it a second.
Great, you're back.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah,
Back,
I'm
Robert.
back too.
Yeah.
Robert, maybe to wrap up, because we don't want to take that much time on. I know that you have
Yes.
some things. I'm sure that super kind of thrilling to be at the thick of the whole discussions happening. And I don't know if you talked briefly with this with Daniel, but in terms of what to look forward to, obviously you mentioned that we as a planet, with society, we have all the technology. Finally, countries and companies are paying attention, taking the whole countries seriously, and the reputational risk, and actually the potential for climate catastrophe, and how everything's going to be affected, every single business model. What do you think from a kind of consumer, individual perspective, we should kind of look forward to and say, okay, maybe these are the top 3 things, if we can kind of reduce it to the minimum that people can do, and across the board, right? It's kind of engaging politically, it's engaging with the money, it's engaging with the careers, is it kind of playing a part in climate activism? Is it all above? Like, what would you say is like, from your kind of wide perspective, what you're seeing, where the rest of us, that perhaps some might feel that this green transition might not touch on their careers, or might be a bit kind of abstract, or as you actually idea at the beginning of the conversation, might not see how climate change, they see in the news and they see the floods here and there, but sometimes they see it potentially it's up to them to solve it. And it should be the politicians, where we know that sometimes actually it has been slower in terms of the pace that we would like to see. So what would you say, like, what would be your hope message in terms of, hey, we can all do our part?
So that is, I think, we can all do our part. And I was at a dinner last night and they were talking about hope. Hope is not a passive something. I can't sort of hope to win Wimbledon one day. I can't hope for this to happen. Hope is an active choice. And so I think, every one of us needs to be hopeful, but we need to take action. I think the thing that has the greatest leverage is voting. When the politicians know that people care, they will do something. And the challenge right now is there's what's called the think-do gap. So there are a lot of surveys that show that more and more people care about this. So you're getting 80 or 90%, people are in surveys saying we care about this, but the do gap, i.e. what are people doing about it? Are they
Exactly.
changing their jobs? Are they changing their consumption habits? Isn't happening. So the biggest thing is we need to change this think-do gap
Hmm.
And that's all the stuff that we just talked about earlier with Daniel. But I would say, given that 2024, 2025 is a massive election period, given that 2025, I think people are going to start seeing this kind of S curve of renewables, electric vehicles, this
Booming.
confluence of
Hmm.
technologies all coming together to show that we've broken the hump and now we can do it.
Mm.
Uh, that is the key point. Now, what the interesting thing is that this has got nothing to do with whether you're so politically left or right. If both parties understand that this is an issue, as I say, politicians are just self-selecting. They just want to vote. They want to come up with policies that will keep them in power. So
Exactly.
this is neither. This is not a statement about uh, Democrats versus Republicans or conservative versus Labour or left versus right.
Hmm.
As individuals, as voters, we need to let politicians know that we care about this and we want them to do something about this. And we need to stop framing this in 2050. We need to frame this in what does this mean for me in 2025? What does this mean for me in 2030? So we need to bring in our time horizons and set goals. Any of us who've been on a fitness journey, trying to get fit, will know that, we all have good plans typically in the new year in January. The hardest thing is the kind of the commitment and the consistency to get there. And change takes time.
Hmm.
It takes 3 months to become a habit. It takes 6 months before you start to see impact.
Folks,
But when
yeah.
that impact kicks in, then it's transformational. And so that's the journey that we need to go on. So as we all head into 2024, think about your understanding about what this means for you as a citizen, what it means for you and your family, and vote that way. Think about the company you work for. Think about how you
Mm.
shop in a mindful way. Enjoy stuff. I'm not anti holidays. I'm not anti, but just be more mindful about
Yeah,
what you eat. Cut down food waste, and then engage with your pension fund, because that will be incredibly good for your own financial future. So that's definitely good for you. Really understand what's in your pension fund. How much are you saving? Have you got enough? And then understand how it's investing. And if we all do that, we can all make a massive difference. And I think that's the really empowering thing, is that collectively we all have
exactly.
much more agency and impact than we understand.
Amazing, Robert. Yeah, really appreciate your time and this conversation. I think there's so much to continue and carry on. But yeah, we don't want to take too much time from you at Dubai and also from our listeners. So yeah, I think it has been amazing and very insightful conversation. And thank you very much for your time today. Looking forward to do another one.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank, keep going, and
Yeah.
it's been a
Bye,
pleasure.
everyone. Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you. And cheers. Bye.